Joe from San Diego joining the program now. You have information on Buck Compton?
Well, yeah, he himself has written his autobiography, and it's called Call of Duty, and it's a wonderful, wonderful book. And Buck had, Mr. Compton still has quite the life after Band of Brothers. And as I listened to his interview, Buck Compton in the series, when Neil McDonough betrayed him, the writers of the series made it look like Buck Compton fell apart after Wild Bill and Joe Toy lost their legs. Well, Buck Compton, when he wrote his autobiography, had a different perspective of what happened. And so, if you were to have the chance, I encourage everybody to read Buck Compton's autobiography, just to get a different picture of Buck. And you were absolutely correct. He really is a really, truly very humble American hero, and his autobiography is wonderful. So I just wanted to call and let you know that, in case anybody was listening and wondered why Buck wasn't more effusive in his praise of Dick Winters.
No, and I thank you very much for calling, Joe. It definitely fills in some blanks for us. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful testament. I think it's very, very much to your credit that you made this available on the Internet for everybody. Dick Winters really very much an American hero. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome, Joe, and thanks for listening.
You're most welcome. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Richard Speight Jr. is calling us. Richard Speight Jr.
Yes.
There you are, sir. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. Welcome to today's show, the tribute to Dick Winters. We've talked to so many of the veterans and so many of your fellow castmates already that it's just amazing to hear the stories and the accolades thrown about on a man who wanted none of it. And we're very happy that you could join us today.
Yeah, I think that's part of what makes Dick Winters such an iconic figure, is that he didn't embrace the heroism that he portrayed. I think he took it in stride, which made it all the more baffling for regular Joes like you and me, who probably, I could say actually, definitely wouldn't have had the smarts or the know-how or the courage to do what he did in the heat of battle. It's just mind-boggling to think about what that man accomplished, and he did it with such grace and such ease and such stoicism. And then when it was all said and done, he just, seemingly took off the uniform and went back to his daily life without much of a sense of, hey, look at me, look what I did. And it's just amazing. It's amazing to think about what he accomplished and how in the shadows he kept that heroism until the books and movies brought it out.
It's mind-boggling that it would take books and movies to bring it out. I mean, it's weird to think in today's day and age of instant gratification with news and media and Twitter and Facebook and cell phones with cameras on it and video that it didn't used to be like that at all. And people would go out and put their lives at risk for an ideal, for a cause, to make sure that we could, in the future, have exactly what we got going on now. And think nothing of it because they felt it was their responsibility to do these heroic things that they don't even think are heroic. It was just their job.
Exactly. That's the part that's fascinating, is that they voluntarily joined the Airborne, and Dick Winters sort of emerged as a leader of the group, and did what he did out of a sense of patriotism and duty and allegiance to his fellow soldiers, and wouldn't consider that a remarkable act. And the truth is, it is a remarkable act. And the fact that he doesn't consider it a remarkable act makes it all the more remarkable. I mean, I keep hammering the same point, but that's what makes that entire generation of men and women such unique enigmas. Because you can't live in the world we live in today and even imagine that type of person existed. Somebody who didn't want the spotlight, somebody who didn't want the accolade, somebody who didn't, want to say, hey, look at me, because in this day and age, look, a lot of our men and women in uniform carry on that tradition of bravely, quietly doing their duty. And I think that standard was set by, soldiers in the past like Dick Winters. He just happened to be involved in a war and several battles in a war that were, uniquely tailored to need somebody like Dick Winters and Easy Company and other men like them to carry out the missions. And so the fact that he was able to sort of step in, it was kind of a perfect storm. It was the right man for the right job at the right time. Terrible time, a dark time, a violent time, but unfortunately a necessary time. And without a Dick Winters, without many Dick Winters, we would be living in a very different country. We would be very different people. So his impact is immeasurable. His impact, and it's symbolic of so many people. I think that's what makes the Band of Brothers story resonate and Dick Winters as the leader resonate, because Dick Winters represents one, and there were many Dick Winters out there in that war, doing what needed to be done, doing it efficiently, and doing it remarkably well. And without, who didn't think, guys who had no military training until the war broke out and who didn't intend to stay in the military when the war was over. But they showed up, strapped on the gear, and did what they had to do, and lost many, many brothers along the way, and saw many, many terrible things that would haunt them the rest of their days. But they did it unflinchingly out of an innate sense of duty and patriotism. And it's just something that it doesn't exist today, and that's what makes it so gut-wrenching to lose a Dick Winters. I would imagine almost all those guys, the first 10, 12 times they got on an airplane, they jumped out of it. I mean, it wasn't like people were zipping around in air travel those days. It was a elite form of transportation. These guys got on and jumped off without ever having flown before.
Now, did you get to meet the man?
I did. And I'm sure if he were with us today, he would have no recollection of it. It was not a monumental event. I was super excited to meet him. It was in Europe. I had seen him on set, but it was in Europe where I actually got to cross his path and meet the guy at one of the screenings. And there he was, and I thought, here's my opportunity. I'm going to go over and introduce myself and talk to the real man, Dick Winters. And I was just nervous as can be, and went over and introduced myself, tell him who I played, and he said, "Oh," I said, "It's just an honor to meet you." And he said, "Thank you."
Richard, hang on just 1 second. Good afternoon, Black Sky Radio. Is this Tim Gray?
It is.
Tim, you're actually on a conference call with Richard Speight Jr., Ross Owen, and myself at this point in time. Do you want to just stay on the line with us while Richard Speight finishes his thought?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Richard, but we're running a little close to the vest today, and this is our next guy who is in charge of the foundation to get the statue of Major Winters at Normandy.
Right, absolutely, of course. Hey, you do what you got to do, man. This is a great show you're putting on.
Well, I want you to go ahead and finish your thought, though.
Well, I was talking about meeting Dick Winters, and it was a big deal to me, and he's so low key that it was just a non-event for him. I'm just some kid enamored with his heroism, and he's just a guy taking it all in stride. It was just so funny to me in hindsight. Because I was like a little boy meeting a hero, and in true hero form, he didn't see himself in that light, so he didn't really embrace the event. He didn't really embrace our meeting. I was, fawning over him and telling him how phenomenal it was to finally meet him, and how I read about his exploits and working on the series have been so phenomenal, and I had so much respect for him, and he basically stood there quietly and nodded. I mean, he just was... It was not a conversation we were going to get into. And there was something about Major Winters that it wasn't just what he had accomplished. The man had an aura. He had such a omnipresent energy. He had such a grounded intensity to himself that you couldn't help but sort of feel like you would follow that man through battle if that battle were taking place this afternoon.
Could I ask a question?
Absolutely, Tim. Go ahead.
Well, Richard, having talked to Ross McCall and James Matteo, and you guys may have touched on this a little bit earlier, but the importance of getting the character right. And could you add a little bit, maybe from, I know Damian, I don't think Damian could be on tonight, but from his perspective and your perspective, how important was it for the actors and going through the boot camp with Dale and everything like that? How important was it for you guys to be as accurate as possible?
I think it was really important. I think you're playing real guys who did real things. So the worst thing you could do was act. The best thing you could do was interpret correctly, because these guys really did it. And so I didn't have the ability to talk to Skip Muck, but the men who did have the ability to talk to their veterans, the men they were portraying, really went to them with this information and said, I'm doing this march into Carentan, I'm going to be in this position, we're going to do this kind of thing, and the men would report back, no you're not, because I wasn't there, or that's not how it went down, or yes, and here's what I said to my buddy as we entered the town, or whatever. And we'd take that information back to the directors and say, you got to take me out of the scene, I wasn't there, or you got to put him over there because he was in this flank. And it became less about ego and screen time and more about, look, we are conduits through which this real story of real men who fought in a real war and faced horrendous challenges over the period that they were in Europe. We are these guys for this period of time. So we can't be Richard Speight, Matthew Settle, Damian Lewis, Jimmy Matteo. We have to be Percani. We have to be Dick Winters. We have to be Muck. We got to be those guys. We got to just channel it and get our egos and ourselves out of the way. You could do some things, like Frank was able to do a sort of physicality that helped tie Guarnere to the character, and there were some accent issues for various guys doing different regionalisms. But for the most part, you really just had to be sure that you were true to what these guys really did. Because again, we weren't creating something out of thin air. We were reenacting something that had really happened. So there's a certain amount of responsibility that comes with that, because once it's printed to film and cut together and aired, that's how people are going to view it, wrongly or rightly. They're going to see that action on film and go, hey, that's what Skip Muck did. Hey, that's what Major Winters did. So you damn well better get it right, because it really happened. And now it's on your shoulders not to screw it up.
And you mentioned, obviously, you never got to meet Skip Muck, but you were in Tonawanda this past summer with George Love Jr. and many of the family members to take part in a ceremony honoring him, which kind of you're very much tied to not only the guy you play, but the family now as well. Absolutely.
I said this in my speech, and it's true. I'm sitting in my office right now, and framed right above where I sit is a picture of Skip Muck in his jump gear and Toccoa. And it was the experience of being in Band of Brothers and playing Skip Muck far supersedes an acting job. It was a life experience, and it has bonded me to the Luzzes. It has bonded me to the Malarkeys. It's bonded me, obviously, to the Muck family. Not people I met on a job and then went off my merry way. We are right. Interrelated. I mean, I would say we're like family in regard, because it was such a unique experience for them. The Muck family had never even heard of the book. They had no idea their uncle or brother was portrayed in a book. They didn't know anything that happened to him in the war because he died. And yeah, it was a remarkable experience.
Richard, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day and coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you again and hearing your stories.
Thank you guys for doing this tribute, because honestly, there should be one for every veteran from that war that passes. Unfortunately, it's not possible, but there's so many great men who gave so much for that cause, and certainly Dick Winters is one of the elite few out of a group of remarkable people. And so thank you for taking your time and putting the people together to have a fitting tribute. And Tim, thank you for being the pointy end of the bayonet to get the man honored in statue form. I mean, it's great. It's a phenomenal mission you're on.
Well, if I could bring the French over here, I think a lot of the times, in this case too, the French are so excited. The people in Normandy are so excited about this, and the people in Saint Marie du Mont and the folks at the Utah Beach Museum. There's just this excitement that if I could bring the passion that they have for the men who helped liberate them, to bring it over here and bring that into the high schools and the colleges and say, this is what it's like.
It really is a remarkable project. And again, I'm going to beat the drum here, but it's phenomenal that when people get involved and really pay tribute to these guys, because something that generations can go see, a statue to Dick Winters, a monument to Skip Muck, it's just phenomenal. It's phenomenal. It's great. It might be that Band of Brothers, the book and the series, injected enough passion in the people to know the name Major Winters and Skip Muck, but it takes so much effort on individuals' parts to actually get those monuments put together, to get those memories compiled and have people rally around it to immortalize these men in these cities, and it's just wonderful that you're doing it.
Well, thank you. I think what it also does, it gets kids to ask their parents, their father, their mother, their grandfather, their grandmother what they did in the war. And I think it gets people talking. And you know how the World War II generation is. They don't volunteer a lot of information. If they're asked, and they're asked in the right way, they may start talking. And I think what Band of Brothers did was, get veterans, the children and the grandchildren of veterans, whether the men served or the women served in the home front or in the Pacific or Europe, to say, hey, what did you do in the war? Tell me what you did. And I think it brings families closer, and I think the Band of Brothers had a lot to do with that.
It's hard to get projects made. We're sitting back and looking at Band of Brothers and going, well, it was great, obviously. Going into a room, I'm sure, at HBO and saying, we want to do 10 hours on World War II. And they said, 10 hours? You did 2 in Private Ryan, it was great. Let's leave it alone. And they had to fight and explain that there was more stories to tell and that people would care and that these stories did matter. And you need somebody with the clout of a Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg, quite frankly. Without them, without their names in the marquee, we're not sitting around here talking about Dick Winters. So, they have done a great service to this country using their fame to tell real stories of real men who did remarkable things.
All right. Well, Richard, I don't want to take up any more of your time. I do want to let you know that Ross McCall said he'd see you tomorrow.
Gotcha,
I think Richard's going to his house to help him bail out, I think.
Yeah, apparently I just got to put on my hip waders and go to...
Watch out for the fish.
Exactly.
It's been great talking to you, and I look forward to meeting you in person someday. And Ross and Nightmare, great show. Thanks for doing this.
Come to Scotland sometime. We'll hook up and have a beer. Or a Pepsi.
or both.
Yeah. Nice product placement there, Ross. All right, we'll talk to you later, Richard. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Richard.